SCP-3813. Object Class Keter. By order of the Overseer Council, the following describes a Keter class anomaly entity that is blah 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 blah. Unauthorized access is forbidden, whatever. Special Containment Procedures. The primary superstructure of SCP-3813 is located at the bottom of the Phyrean Sea. Due to its size and position on the seabed, transportation is invisible. Further analysis, as well as additional information from third-party sources, are necessary to ensure the long-term containment of SCP-3813. Should SCP-3813 become active, Site-77's mobile task forces are to mobilize to SCP-3813's current location and await further orders. Foundation assets embedded in local maritime law enforcement are to prevent civilian access to SCP-3813. Anyone attempting to access SCP-3813's site are to be interrogated. All information pertaining to SCP-3813 are to be removed from the historical record. The current cover story, however, can be requested at the Department of Disinformation. Data file 3813.10841, Second Punic War, Variation 6. Description: SCP-3813 is a massive mechanical superstructure located beneath the Phyrean Sea, roughly 17 kilometers southwest of Rome, near the Italian peninsula. While the majority of the superstructure is buried beneath the sea floor, the interior is a partially submerged network of corridors and passageways. A significant percentage can be accessed by Foundation personnel equipped with standard issue diving equipment. Historical records indicate the SCP-3813 was a mechanical war elephant, equipped with a number of antiquated armaments including catapults and ballistae, along with a command tower on the back of the construct. How SCP-3813 was powered is unknown, though investigation of the interior of the collapsed superstructure indicates an anomalous design. Records pertaining to SCP-3813 have been removed from the public historical records by unknown agents, either during the days of the Roman Republic, Roman Empire, or the early Catholic Church. Remaining information indicates that SCP-3813 was a mechanical siege engine commissioned by the Carthaginian military for use during the Second Punic War. The entity stood roughly 375 meters in height, but whatever. Anyway, it was capable of carrying a number of Carthaginian soldiers and supplies. Addendum 3813-1. Surviving historical records of SCP-3813. The majority of the information pertaining to SCP-3813 was gathered from a property owned by former Church of the Broken God leader Robert Bumaro. The documents and artwork were discovered within a sealed vault located beneath the property. Included among these documents were receipts from the following parties: the Journeyman, Wilmington and Associates, the Orion Institute, Curvier International, and, of course, Marshall, Carter, and Dark Limited. Documents and artwork totaled a number of 1,391 pieces. Alongside these pieces were also notes and journals written by high-ranking members of the Church of the Broken God and Bumaro himself. These included schematics, diagrams, graphs, and other charts about 3813, the surrounding region, and a long-form technical documents about the entity's power source. The majority of gathered information came from three notable historians: Aquila of Naples, Petronius Narcissus, and finally an unidentified individual who claimed to have fought the Carthaginians on the shore near Ostia. Other minor sources have been identified, mainly consisting of collected writings from citizens within Rome. The first account of SCP-3813 by a non-Carthaginian source comes from the records of Ada of Syracuse, a Sicilian merchant traveling to Palermo in 217 BC. Translation follows. At the first light of the morning, we were awoken by a terrible sound. From our hillside we could see the city below us and the sea beyond. In the far distance stood a terrible creature, as tall as a mountain, and striding through the ocean on legs that could have reached into the heavens on their own. It hissed and roared and smoked, filling the sky with fire and ash. Astride its back was a tower, a quarter again as tall as the beast, and I could just barely make out the men running across its battlements. When the creature came to a stop near midway, we moved towards the beach to see it clearer. And when the smoke was blown away, we could truly make out its terrible form. An elephant, like those in the south, only misshapen and hideous. Surrounding its feet were ships flying the flag of Carthage, and together they moved slowly through the water towards Rome. Even after it disappeared hours later, I could still hear the endless grinding and the screeching of the metal. The next account was made by a Roman soldier traveling north to meet the Carthaginians, described SCP-3813 as such. It is the doom of Rome. The last sounds he will make will be a scream as he is broken into half by a monster that barely recognizes that he is there at all. The Neapolitan artist Zetes, who was in Rome during the Carthaginians' attack on the city, described the scene as such in his letter to a friend in the north. It follows with a blistering heat, and the air around it shimmers and bakes. The sea beneath it boils and rolls. Those unfortunate enough to be caught in it burn. 3 nights ago, I witnessed a merchant ship attempting to flee the harbor of Ostia and make it for open waters south of the Colossus. But it had not touched the open sea before the beast groaned and turned to face it, belching fire out of its mouth that set the vessel ablaze. Now, this Colossus sits in the sea, waiting for the arrival of an army from the north. The garrison has erected catapults and entrenched the shoreline. But what might men do have in the face of such unstoppable hate? The solitary Carthaginian account, outside of Hannibal's, of SCP-3813 comes from a single author, Servius. According to Servius, Carthage was not aware of SCP-3813 until Hannibal's brother Hasdrubal marched it into the city himself. I assume they mean the city of Carthage. That was seen as a sure sign of Carthage's inevitable victory over Rome. Servius claimed a familiarity with Hasdrubal's son, Hiram. Following Hiram's death during the battle, Servius described an increasingly desperate situation for the Carthaginian forces, including unpredictable behavior from SCP-3813's commander, Hasdrubal. Servius' account ends shortly after Roman siege weapons drive SCP-3813 back into the sea. The only supported statement made by Hannibal about SCP-3813 is from a conversation he had with Scipio many years later while serving as a political advisor to the Seleucid kingdom. I am not sure about the source of the following statements. I suspect it's from the Greek historian Appian of Alexandria. It was said that at one of their meetings in the gymnasium, Scipio and Hannibal had a conversation on the subject of generalship, in the presence of a number of bystanders, and that Scipio asked Hannibal whom he considered the greatest general, to which he later replied, Alexander of Macedonia. To this Scipio assented, since he also yielded the first place to Alexander. Then he asked Hannibal whom he had placed next, and he replied, Pyrrhus of Epirus, because he considered boldness the first qualification of a general. For it would not have been possible, he said, to find two kings more enterprising than these. Scipio was rather nettled by this, but nevertheless he asked Hannibal to whom he would give the third place. Hannibal replied, in a different world, one where I had not touched the face of darkness, I might have said myself. For I, even as a young man, conquered Hispania and led an army across the Alps, the first since Hercules. With this said, Scipio smiled and asked again, So then who stands after Pyrrhus of Epirus? Hannibal replied, The man who felled Hyperion. The following is an audio-video log transcription taken from an early exploration attempt into SCP-3813. 3 members of Mobile Task Force Roma 9, right south, included Vanguard, Cetrate, and Nerus. These 3 agents were assigned to enter an exposed section of SCP-3813 to investigate. Audio was recorded from all 3 agents. Video was taken from a submergible vehicle and Agent Nerus and Cetrate's independent video feeds. Agent Cetrate and Nerus entered SCP-3813, where the front leg met the main body of the entity. Vanguard stayed behind in a submergible vehicle to monitor the agents.
Alright, we're online. You ready?
You got it. We detected a damaged panel. It might be a possible access point to the interior. Heading there now.
Scanning. I had no chance to see it up close yet. This was built by people?
That's what they tell me.
Hard to believe something this big could move.
It's gotta be tight, I think. Activate night vision. Stay behind me. Let me know if you see anything weird. Any idea where this is going?
Somewhere inside there is a bigger section. Bigger than this. I can barely move.
Wait. The space opens up into a larger tube. Blasted. There's a large stone in the way. Looks carved. Like a cannonball.
Explains how our entrance got here.
Let's go up this pipe. We're looking for... I guess a power supply would be a good start.
I wonder where all these other pipes lead. Hey, look down there. You see something?
A fish, perhaps?
Maybe. Let's see if we can get a better look at it. I'll turn on my light. Oh shit! You see that? Do you see that there, by the end of the pipe? Vanguard, did you see that?
Yeah, I'm looking at the footage now. I don't know, boys. It moved about as soon as you turned the light on. Keep an eye out.
Roger, Vanguard.
You guys hear that?
No. What do you mean? Vanguard, did you see that?
At this point, the electrics inside the submergible begin to act erratically. This continues for a moment, until all electrics inside the submergible shut off completely. Agent Vanguard launches an SOS balloon from inside the submergible and waits for assistance. Inside SCP-3813, both Agent Nerus and Cetrate are disconnected. After roughly 4 minutes, both men activate their independent video recorders.
Probably just interference. Let's keep going. That darn dead end.
Look, there's a valve up there, right above us.
Well, here goes nothing.
Look at that. It wasn't submerged yet.
It will be if we don't hurry up.
Looks like the air's breathable. Okay, That's good. We can... What's that?
Seth! Look here! Is that...
Get out!
By Jove. Is that a person? He's merged with mechanics in the wall around it.
Yeah?
Get
It's not in great
out!
shape. Let's keep moving.
Get out!
The agents continue their exploration of the tight quarters of SCP-3813's interior for some time. The camera records small side rooms containing discarded machine parts. The structure appears to have been damaged and repaired at some points in time. New rivets have been placed and leaking steam lines have been patched or replaced.
It's getting warmer. I can hear something done this way.
Let's not waste any time then.
What's that pounding?
They reach the end of a hallway that has collapsed. On the ground below them is another valve, and both men descend. This space is similar to the earlier tubes, only both men are now descending feet first and cannot see what lies beneath them. As they shimmer down the tube, their thermometers continue to rise.
Fuck me, Todd. Even the walls are here. Fuck! Don't touch the walls. Shit.
We're gonna need to get out of here. We're going to cook.
Can we turn back?
Hell no! I can't even touch the walls of the... What's the matter with you? What's happening there? We need to get out of here.
Give me a moment. It's flat. It's sealed. I can't go. No, we're going to.
Ah, my hand!
Naru screams in pain and tries to climb back up the tube. His hand slides against the hot metal and he falls back down on Cetrate. The platform collapses and both fall into the chamber beneath.
Watch it.
Ah, my hand!
Stand on a steel grate roughly 3 meters below. The temperature of the room is unsafe, and both men scramble to their feet. Nerus inspects his blistered hands, while Cetrate scans the room.
Nurse. There.
The camera prance across the room. Near the far end is a large, seven-toothed gear, suspended above a large tank of water. White hot, the gear is rotating slowly, and as it does, it appears to pass through the closed top of the tank, as if the gear were intangible. The water boils on contact with the gear, producing steam. Thousands of small metal tubes run out of the tank, which feed into smaller tanks. Each tank is covered in valves, gauges, and hundreds of lines that feed into the wall of the chamber.
Steam engine?
That's why it's so hot. We're headed through the bloody exhaust.
God, my hands.
Nerus, look. The walls. Both those things.
Figures are beginning to appear in the machinery walls. These figures are all vaguely humanoid, with rotting skin and mechanical replacements for key parts of their bodies. They walk through the walls towards the two agents. The agents flee away from the engine and towards an opening on the other end. They have to get their hands and knees to enter. It leads them into a larger empty tank on the other side. Mechanical humanoids begin to appear around them, and a few move towards a large wheel near the top. As they turn it, the water begins to fill the tank.
Come on!
The men seal their helmets as water washes over them. The mechanical humanoids jump into the tank from above and sink down toward them. Both of the men dive down towards the bottom of the tank where a small hatch is visible on one side. A mechanical figure attempts to grab Nerus from the beginning, but is thrown off. Cetrate grabs the wheel on the hatch and, with some effort, spins it. The hatch opens and both men are pulled into the enclosed space beyond as water rushes out of the tank. They slide through the darkness for some time through a series of tubes, eventually depositing into another chamber. This chamber is similarly cramped, but appears to be free of the mechanical humanoids. This is when Agent Cetrate's camera goes offline.
Oh dear, I think I landed on my camera. The bloody lens is busted.
Not the lens, just a recorder. Transmitter is fine, but I bet the film is gone too. Pull it out and stick it into mine. It'll at least be safe from the water in there. We can just look at it when we get topside. All right. So there are people, things in here. It's that hot gear up there. That's got to be an anomalous power source, right? Did you see how it was just facing through the metal in one tank?
How are your hands?
Yeah, they're done for. I'm just gonna slow you down.
Right. Can you help me reach those cells up there? We'll try and find a way out.
Yeah, they're done. I'm just gonna slow you
I
down.
think I can squeeze myself through the pipe. Here we go. There's a light passing through the sides.
Cetrate climbs on Naru's shoulders, and the two men squeeze into another confined space. They work their way through, careful to avoid making any sound. Lights can be seen through the walls of the hallway. As they reach the door on the far end, Naru leans in to listen.
Sounds like there's water on the other side. I bet this is an external door. Come on, let's go.
Cetrate spins the hatch on the door and opens it. Water then begins to fill the room. Once the chamber is sufficiently flooded, he opens the door completely and they step outside. They are standing on one of the many suspended platforms hanging off the sides of SCP-3813. Just past the edge of the railing, the dim lights of the submergible vehicle become visible.
Emergency lights? Looks like something must have happened to the sub. Vanguard, do you see us? Vanguard! Vanguard, you read us now? Come on, let's get out of...
There's a loud cracking sound, and suddenly, Cetrate is pulled back through the hatch behind them. The force of Cetrate being pulled into SCP-3813 spins Naru sideways, and his helmet gets smashed against the side of the railing.
Oh, Jesus! Vanguard! Vanguard, do you read me? I'm stuck! I'm taking on water. Vanguard, help!
Agent Naru attempts to free himself from the railing. Meanwhile, there's no response from Agent Vanguard.
Cetrate! Cetrate! Vanguard, help me! I can't get unstuck!
Inside, Cetrate is pulled backwards. Naru's video feed captures Cetrate disappeared into the ceiling of the hallway. On Cetrate's video transmitter, all that can be seen around him is metal moving, and the only sound is steel on steel. His video feed, now transmitting to the submergible, flickers slightly but remains constant. Outside, Agent Naru pulls again and frees himself from the railing. With his suit quickly filling with water, he swims towards the submergible.
Vanguard! Vanguard, open the hatch!
Agent Naru is seen approaching the submergible, though his movements are erratic. He makes little progress.
Vanguard! Help! I'm drunk! I can't!
Agent Naru pulls out his belt and disconnects his video recorder, which he throws at the sub. He struggles with his helmet for the following 23 seconds before becoming still. His suit hangs in the water just in front of the submergible. After a moment, his body sinks toward SCP-3813. Agent Cetrate's video feed, on the other hand, becomes dark for several minutes as the agent is pulled through the interior of SCP-3813. Eventually, a small, dimly lit room becomes visible. There are humanoid entities around the chamber, operating machines. Steam fills the air. Agent Cetrate tries to resist, but his arms and legs are restrained by the wall behind him. In the center of the room, there's a large mechanical component that appears to have been burst through the floor. Conjoined into this structure is a skeletal figure with a bloodied, tanned skin and thin gray hair. A golden circlet is fused to the figure's scalp. when the entity turns to face Agent Cetrate, it smiles, and behind its teeth, a fire can be seen burning in its throat, and small red lights flash in its eye sockets. Foundation linguists and analysts with access to this file are to utilize the following audio log in conjunction with several evaluations of file SCP-3813-9-A in order to identify the entity interacting with Agent Cetrate. The entity speaks. The language is unidentified and it has not yet been translated.
Noskaram, lesonar marasi, Noskaram.
I don't know what you're saying.
It reaches a hand out from the machine it is fused into, up to move away its hair. The red lights in its eyes begin to glow brighter, and SCP-3813 shudders around them. The entity speaks again, more forcefully this time.
Noskaram.
What do you want?
The entity steps forward. As it does, the machine it is attached to begins to stir, and long mechanical constructs snake out of it to follow the figures towards Agent Cetrate. After a moment, the entity is within an arm's length of Cetrate. Its body is still connected to the central machine by numerous cables, tubes, wires, and other machine parts. The entity smiles again, and the fire in its throat is visible. Smoke then begins to pour out of its nostrils and mouth. The figure reaches an arm into the ground, and through the machinery on the flooring produces a Foundation standard diving helmet. The visor is down, and the interior is cloudy, but other tubes and hoses sneak out of the bottom of it. Red fluid pulses through the hoses. The figure holding the helmet begins to speak, and as it does, Neru's voice speaks from inside the clouded helmet. The voice is metallic, heavily distorted, and in English.
You look to run, as a true coward of Rome. There's no path but forward. For too long I've waited, for too long I have suffered. Till the son of Rhodes comes, I've held this machine together in anticipation for your arrival. I hope only that you resist so I can enjoy breaking your will.
No, don't touch me, no.
There's much to do, and Rome must burn.
After this, the video and audio feed are cut out and do not reactivate. End of log. Shortly afterwards, Foundation recovery teams collected the submergible vehicle and the video recorders of both agents. Agent Vanguard was brought in for the briefing. Agents Cetrate and Nerus were never recovered. A complete historical summary of SCP-3813 attack on Rome has been compiled by Foundation historian Dr. Elias Anthony in document 3813-L. Let me know if you want me to read this as well, dear listeners. Well, that was SCP-3813. Another interesting entry. Just the size of that thing though, I mean. SCP-2406 wasn't that big. Maybe it was a reference to the depth of the Thyrian Sea, which is 3,785 meters. Still, 375 meters sounds a bit exaggerated. But maybe that's just me. Also, I wanted to point out that we recently started a Subscribestar page. If you want to support us making videos like this, please consider donating $1 a month. And of course you can always support this channel by sharing and liking our videos. But for now, thank you for listening, and of course, make it your way.